If you're going to succeed as a company, you have to do something novel, something different. You have to differentiate yourself from somebody else, right? And the only way you're going to do that is to push yourself out of your comfort zone. That takes courage, right? Courage, I think, is defined as, something that you're fearful of, right? Overcoming something you're afraid of. While in a business context, that's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, doing something you haven't done before. And, you have to be able to take those risks. You have to be able to try something that someone else hasn't done. Otherwise, you're not going to really stand out from the crowd.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Courage. We all have to be more courageous as the business grows. Leadership is not for the faint of heart. I know I've been there, and I interview a lot of people who are courageous to, the highest levels. But how do you get there? How do you get to a point of being a courageous leader? Well, we're going to talk about that today. But I will share with you a little story from my journey as an entrepreneur and as a leader. I ran a business for 9 years. I had tremendous amount of faith and courage around what I was doing. And in fact, I didn't have much fear. But after about 3 years, when we got to 5 million in revenue, I felt more afraid. I felt the fear of losing what I had to go after what I really wanted. I wanted to innovate. I wanted to really push the business to a new business model, but I wouldn't let myself do it. I talked about it, but I didn't do anything about it. And so courage was something that just faded away. I became complacent. I share that with you because I wrote a book about it called The Trap of Success. I'm not here to sell you books, but we're going to talk about courage from the perspective of what does it take to be a courageous leader. Today's guest is Michael Resnik. He is the co-founder of TriFold. They create a very unique, innovative product that helps people move products upstairs. And they have some other innovations that we'll talk about today. One of the things I like most about it, he talks about the need for us to pass along courage to our employees. That's a very critical aspect to you as a leader as you develop them. So stay tuned to this interview with Michael. Thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews in the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. So you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Grow Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. Now, here is the interview with Michael Resnik. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. I wanted to let you know I've already introduced the concept of TriFold to them, and I'll tell them a little bit about Michael. But what is context or TriFold, and what context do you have that you can share with us?
Sure. So at TriFold, we're a small family business that we really care about improving the mobility and independence and productivity of our customers. So we make mobility products that help people get heavy or bulky stuff up and down the stairs or uneven surfaces. Our whole purpose in what we do is we innovate. We create new products that make it easier for people to get through their day, whether that be an elderly individual trying to get their groceries into the house, or a small business owner delivering product samples or packages to someone's office location. We really just strive to make things easier for people.
Well, we're going to talk about innovation today and being a leader who creates innovation culture. And one of the big core aspects behind that we've already been talking about is courage. So why is courage such an important piece to a company and their growth?
Well, I mean, the reality is that if you're going to succeed as a company, you have to do something novel, something different. You have to differentiate yourself from somebody else, right? And the only way you're going to do that is to push yourself out of your comfort zone. that takes courage, right? Courage, I think, is defined as, something that you're fearful of, right? Overcoming something you're afraid of. Well, in a business context, that's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, doing something you haven't done before. And, you know, you have to be able to take those risks. You have to be able to try something that someone else hasn't done. Otherwise, you're not going to really stand out from the crowd.
Well, we have all had to call on that courage. When you said overcoming fears, give us an idea of a fear that you had to face in the journey of growing TriFold.
Probably the most fundamental one, which is a fear I have every single day. When you work in corporate, I mean, I came out of the Fortune 500, it's OPM, other people's money, right? When you are starting your own business, you're signing on the dotted line. I mean, that is your personal money, that's your life savings, that's your family's well-being. So every decision you make related to financials, I mean, that is money, that is your kid's college fund, that's your mortgage payment. And so a fear that you have to overcome is you can't be stifled by that. You have to be willing to take those risks and invest in that future of your company. And you have to have the confidence and faith that you're going to be able to manage through that. That's a fear that is always there, right?
Well, I know that I've had that fear before, because when I ran my business years ago, when we got up to about 5 million, I had no fear. Like, I just didn't know. I didn't know that was hard. And when I got to the 5 million, I found myself got a little bit more complacent. Have you seen any kind of complacency that you've had to really address and put a spotlight on for you to continue the growth that you have?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily complacency. I think the scale makes your decision-making process alter. So I think when we were first getting started, any expense over $100, I was like scrutinizing. As you continue to grow, those expenses get larger. The size of those checks get bigger, and so you start getting a little bit higher thresholds on what it is that you're sensitive to, and that's dangerous, right? I wouldn't call that complacency, but you're going to take you're going to allow a little more rope, and so that money goes a lot faster. So you do have to have some controls in place to make sure that you're not just saying, okay, well, that's only, or it used to be, oh my God, that's $150. Now, like, oh, that's only $5,000. Let's give it a try, right? So you have to have a good plan in place to manage how much risk are you willing to take, how much budget are you willing to allocate to those types of things. So yeah, I mean, I think you do have to be careful because the scale changes, and so your decision-making process has to change along with it.
Now, Michael just talked about being complacent and that feeling of complacency. Well, I felt it too. I shared a little bit of my story from before, but let me just remind you, The Trap of Success is a book that I wrote a couple of years ago about my journey of losing it all, but looking back and realizing what I was missing as a founder and as a leader of a team. I'd fallen complacent with how I was evolving, and that really did limit how the business grew, how I grew. It limited my revenues, but I didn't see it at the time. It took something dramatic in my life that I wrote about in the book to help me see what I couldn't see before. So here's your wake-up call. If you want to make sure you're living courageously, you've got to look at some of the fears that have a grasp on you and what they really mean. Now back to the interview with Michael. One of the areas I see within leadership, once you get to the point you are with your company, because you made the Inc. list, number 239, you had a 17,000% plus growth over a 3-year period, and you were at about 7 million, and I know you've probably grown since then, but you have to be the leader to others and pass along that courage. Tell me a little bit about why that's necessary for you as the company continues.
Well, at the beginning of this conversation, you asked me how many employees we had, and we only have 6 employees. You can't continue to grow and operate at this level if you don't instill in your employees that sense of ownership and that ability for them to be courageous and take ownership and take some of those risks, right? The way I've always tried to coach and mentor my team is, look, I don't want to hear about it if it's less than X amount of dollars, or if it's, less, set a threshold. It's your response to make those decisions. And I push them out of their comfort zone a little bit. It doesn't mean you let them jump without a parachute. We check in, we say, okay, what decisions did you make? Let's review, is that a good or bad decision? But I try not to step in and correct mistakes. I actually let them make some of those mistakes so they can learn from them. I think part of what you have to do is you have to test and learn constantly. You have to take a calculated risk make a decision, and if it fails, that's not a bad thing. That's a learning opportunity. And as long as you have good safety net of controls in place, saying, look, I'll let you make a decision up to X amount of dollars. Beyond that, yeah, let's review it. And so I think that's the way that we're able to continue to not only have my team feel like they own what they're working on, but also continue to expand and grow their courage and their leadership skills.
Hold on for a second. Michael just talked about creating a place where people feel like owners, the sense of ownership. Well, it's one of the areas where I've spoken about it on big stages. But let me give you the data. When I went out and interviewed over 500 employees, they gave me back some of the core factors of their growth and within their culture and leadership. And the number one factor was we want our people to feel a sense of ownership. We want them to own their projects, own the client experience. And in fact, 88% said it was important or very important to the success of their company for them to create this feeling of ownership across the culture. Now, I share that with you because I want to make sure you know how important it is to other fast growth leaders, and so that you can actually model that by listening to the show and by checking in with me if you have any questions about what ownership means inside your culture and your leadership. Now, back to the interview. Ownership is one of the most important areas that fast growth companies have really focused on within the leadership and culture. And I look at different areas like transparency, inclusion, empowerment.
Yep.
Which of those three are something, and you may say all three, but which of the three are you really focused on within the culture of the company?
I mean, it's hard to avoid inclusion because we're all in the same office every single day. We have a small shop, so I mean, they can hear me on the phone, I can hear them. So inclusion is definitely, that's a given. You don't have to work towards that. I would say, transparency is one of those things where, again, with a small shop, it's really easy to do, but you also have to be a little careful. I mean, as a leader, it doesn't matter how size your organization is. There's some things that you need to make sure aren't shared. You don't want to scare your employees. I mean, I have a tolerance for risk that is much higher than what theirs might be. So, you kind of have to balance that. Like, I want them to feel like they understand what's going on. And we actually, even though we're a small shop, we do quarterly offsites. Like, we'll actually get out of the office once a quarter, and I want everybody to be involved in the strategy. Everyone will take a turn to present to the rest of the team about what they're working on, what's working, what isn't, what could we do better. And then we talk about our next 3 months or 6 months or a year together as a team. And I think all those things, even though we're a small company, it allows them to feel like they really have structure and a voice. And I think that's important.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. It adds to that sense or feeling of ownership, which gives them much more buy-in to the work, and you've benefited from that.
Yeah.
When you think about some of the mistakes that you've made in this journey, is there something that kind of stands out that really did test your courage and your resolve as a leader?
Oh God, the mistakes. Let me count the ways. Oh geez, you have to pick just one. No, I mean, there are along the path, there's always a lot of different mistakes. So just to give you some examples, my company survives by innovation, right? We invented a new product that didn't exist. We created a market that didn't exist. And, we, I think, sometimes fall back on what got us here. And so we started to innovate faster. And so we launched products that weren't necessarily ready for the market. We didn't take the same care and attention that we did with our first products. And so when we launched them, they didn't have the same level of quality. We were a little quick to come to market. We didn't put the same care and attention to making sure, because we got a little confident, to your point from earlier, right? Oh, we've already done this several times. We know how to make a good product. Boom, we did something different, and it wasn't well received by the market. And so that was definitely, a pretty significant mistake. It cost us a fair amount of money, but more importantly, reputation, right? TriFold and our brand Upcart. I mean, the reason that we do so well in the market is we're not trying to go after the bottom of the market. We are a premium product. We charge more than our competitors do, and we stand behind our quality, right? We have a lifetime warranty. But when you have a product that you bring to market that doesn't have that degree of quality, I'm not so much concerned about how much it costs us to R&D it. I don't want to damage our brand.
Yeah, it is a tough balance there of waiting for things to be perfect, a of course, we know there's never going to be perfect.
Sure.
And that's one reason why we're talking to you. You've got an innovative brand. You're a top leader in the market, but also you really believe in leading people, not just an army of doers. You really want them to be empowered around the work that they're doing. When you think about the evolution of your business, what are you focused on next?
So innovation is a core of what we do. But part of that innovation comes with understanding your market. And you have to always talk to customers to understand, what is the next thing that they're looking for. We've come up with different degrees or different capacities for our products, everything from, a lightweight 80 pounder just to get groceries up to a 200 pounder that can hold, small compressor, small appliances, furniture. But our customers keep asking, well, we want something to hold more weight. So we haven't gone into the B2B category where we can actually deliver to like plumbers, electricians, HVAC guys, people like delivery drivers like FedEx, UPS. So we're developing a 400-pound capacity hand truck, which is targeted specifically at the small commercial and small industrial market. And then our patents are actually really pretty broad. And we have a roadmap of products we're looking at down the road of something like maybe a baby stroller, maybe medical devices to help people with oxygen tanks and nebulizers, or even rescue wheelchairs. So we kind of have a pretty exciting roadmap down the path. And part of the challenge then is, where do you go next, right? You want to grow and scale the business in measured steps, and I'm not saying you don't completely get courageous and try something very different, but you also have to take calculated risk.
You mentioned the value of that quarterly offsite with your team to align people together and to talk about how you're going to move forward. Are there any other rituals that you have seen that really move the needle as it relates to the courage of the company, or you guys really binding together as a family?
A lot of little things, right? The culture of the business is really, it's not any one thing. We bring our pets to work, right? Just having my dog Shelby sitting here beneath my feet right here. But beyond that, we still do team meetings. Like, we try to minimize meetings because we're not a corporate, we're a small shop. But I've actually realized the value of still getting the team together on a weekly basis to have an all hands meeting, right? And just make sure that we're on the same page. Because it's very easy to get caught up in your day to day. And before you know it, a couple weeks have passed by, and I know what I'm working on, but I might not know what someone who sits next to me every single day is working on. And so even though, the beauty of having your own company is you don't have to have a bunch of meetings, there's value there, right? As long as you have an agenda and you have a purpose to do it. And so that's, some of the things where we have structure where necessary, but avoid it where not. I think that's part of what allows us to do that.
As we wrap this up, Michael, I want to kind of ask you about some of your personal habits or rituals that allow you to be more courageous. And I have no idea what you might say here. It could be something around meditation or visualization, or there's some other thing that you've done that really keeps you aligned with being courageous. What comes to mind?
I'd say, well, two things. One, I did start journaling and meditating, right? So the meditation is something I'm still learning, but journaling's been really helpful. So every morning I go through and I mark down, what am I grateful for? Just to start the day with some gratitude. I talk about what would be awesome to accomplish today. What can I learn from yesterday to make today better? I'm a big believer in trying to do a little bit better every single day. And a lot of that is also taking a risk, of being courageous, right? I can reflect on the last day and say, you know what? I really had an opportunity to be more courageous and I haven't. And just going through that thought process, that exercise every morning, and just to lay out my priorities for the day, but more importantly than just planning, it's reflecting on what can I learn from yesterday to make today better. The other thing, and more of a personal note, I'm a cancer survivor. So last year, or 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer. And, granted, I was courageous up until then, but once you go through something like that, and I'm cancer-free, I'm good now. But once you go through something like that, it changes your perspective on life. It's actually allowed me to be courageous almost in a different way. Is I've cut back my hours substantially. As an entrepreneur, I was working 100+ hour weeks. And what I've learned is that I can actually let go and give my team more they actually have stepped up, and I've found a better work-life balance. And that takes courage. I mean, to let go of something you've built and created and you've spent so much time in. And I thought, oh my God, the sky's going to fall. And it hasn't. I mean, if anything, it's given them, to your point from earlier, more ownership, more accountability. And that makes the whole team more cohesive.
Well, that is a fantastic look back. The reason I bring that up is I've seen a lot of founders that have embraced some type of regular rituals that allow them to keep tuning in every day. And I appreciate you sharing your specific measures that you do, Michael.
Sure.
Thank you for being here at the podcast Growth Think Tank, and I appreciate your wisdom.
Happy to share. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow, what a powerful interview. I love talking about courage because I see so many leaders that know that courage is necessary, but yet they're playing a game to not lose instead of playing to win. They let themselves, fall into this drift, or they focus on the day-to-day details of a business and don't really become the strategic leaders they need to be. If you know that's you, then I'd love to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. I'd love to help share some resources with you. If you want to reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. It's the best way to connect with me. Again, if you want to be a courageous leader and move it to the next level, just reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. As always, lead with courage. I'll see you next time.